to Days of Roar, the Detroit Tiger podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Detroit Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold, who got to spend his first Father's Day yesterday. We are also here to try to calm the waters of Tigers Twitter, who seems to be in a meltdown over losing a series. And what are you going to do? It's baseball. It's 162 games, 26 weeks. But first, before we jump into solving all the world's baseball problems, tell me about your first Father's Day, Evan Petzold.
Yeah, Father's Day was awesome. It started off slow. We got to sleep in on Sunday. I did not work Sunday's game, so that was awesome. I got to spend time with Savannah and Daxton early in the morning, and then I was with them all the way throughout the day, but we got to go to her parents' house, then we got to go to my parents' house, and it was just a full day of family centered around me and Daxton. It was awesome. So happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. It was an incredible first Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you as well, Mark. I hope you had a good day also, but for the first Father's Day, I don't really know how you can top it. We just had a fantastic day all the way around.
Well, I promise you, as someone that has a 35-year-old child and 2 grandchildren, every year tops it. Every single damn year. And next year, he'll be running around and that'll top it. The year after that, he'll be saying your name and give you a kiss, and that'll top it. And when he's 3, he'll be running away from you, and that'll top it. So I got phone calls yesterday from my boys, all 3 of them, all at the same time. And it's never not fun, as Mason Gorash pinched Braden Gorash, and he said, he pinched me. And I said, is that the first time he ever pinched you? He said, yes. I said, Bray, that's 300 times you've pinched him, and 1 time he's pinched you. You're still ahead. All right, let's jump into the baseball. Week in review. Tigers, 3-3 week. Not the most crisp baseball. Lots of other things happen. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, a 3-3 record this week. 2-1 versus the Baltimore Orioles in Baltimore. 1-2 versus Cincinnati Reds in Detroit. Friday's 11-5 win. I mean, that was a lot of fun. You know, Riley Green becoming the first Tigers player with 200 RBIs before age 25 since Travis Fryman, who ended up becoming a 5-time AllStar in his 13-year MLB career. That was probably the highlight. But Saturday's loss, it was 11-1. Jake Rogers was on the mound. That tells you everything you need to know about that game. Also, by the way, kind of a fascinating little, detail. Don't think it really matters, but the Tigers have lost 7 Saturday games in a row dating back to April 26th. Since then, they have a 0-7 record on Saturdays, but a 29-9 record on non-Saturdays. Probably doesn't matter, but just kind of fascinating. And then you have Sunday's game. And Sunday's 8-4 loss, it felt devastating. Only because the Tigers had this 3-2 lead going into the top of the 8th inning, and then the Reds score 4 runs there. That inning started with an error, and then the Reds just chipped away. You're really without a big swing. It was just a bad loss on Sunday. But to put things in perspective, the Tigers still have a 46-27 record. That's the best record in the American League Central by 9 games ahead of the Minnesota Twins. Best record in the American League by 2.5 games ahead of the New York Yankees. And the best record in Major League Baseball by a half game ahead of the New York Mets. So a 3-3 record this week, you never want to see that. But the Tigers are still the best team in baseball according to these standings. And last I checked, the standings are really all that matters. I talked about this on last week's podcast. Like, there are some things that I'm concerned about. The offense, the bullpen. But as long as they're winning, I'm not going to wave the red flag or push that panic button. Again, 3-3 record. No one wants to see that. But at the same time, the Tigers have the best record in baseball. And even the best teams in baseball are going to go through stretches where they have 3 wins in 6 games. Like, it's not that big of a deal, people. So I think where the Tigers are at right now, they're at the top of baseball. And teams in baseball, it's a hard sport. It's a hard game. You're not going to win every game. And so I don't think there's any reason to freak out or push the panic button yet. But again, there are some things to be concerned about. There are some things to look at. And I think that it's important that we discuss those things, right?
We're going to discuss them in question 2 of the Big 2. So stay tuned. I do want to ask you something, because we're both at the core huge baseball fans. Wow! Ellie De La Cruz. Holy smokes, man. What was that? That was like a giant Bobby Witt. That was amazing stuff. So fast, so powerful, switch hits. And I made sure personally, because you weren't there yesterday, that I saw him get on the bus to leave town, because holy smokes, that was something we needed to make sure happened, because single-handedly took all the Tiger lunch money, danced with dates, and if we were to let him stay, things could have got really ugly.
Well, the one thing that stood out to me was, you go back to, Saturday's game, and it was Trey Sweeney going to, I'm pretty sure it was right center field, and the relay throw comes in and it hits Ellie De La Cruz, who's the cutoff man, and Javier Baez is trying to score from first base. And I understand why, Joey Cora is waving him around. I get it. The Tigers play that aggressive brand of baseball, and it would have taken an Ellie De La Cruz-like throw to get Javi Baez at the plate. And sure enough, it was Ellie De La Cruz who had a 98.3 mile an hour throw on the relay to home plate, and it got Javi Baez at home. And at that point, the score was 0-0. That would have been the Tigers' first run. Had Joey Cora would have, thrown up the stop sign, he would have had runners on first and third with nobody out in the third inning. That was a really big moment in the game. Yes, the game ended up getting out of hand, and the Tigers lost 11-1 on Saturday. But that in that moment, it was 0-0 in the third inning with a runner on first base. And you got to tip your cap to Ellie De La Cruz. Again, like anybody else in that position, Javi Baez is probably safe. It was pretty close to a bang-bang play. So you got to tip the cap to Ellie De La Cruz for that. 98 mile an hour throw. Get out of here, man. He is an incredible athlete. He not only does it with the bat, but he does it in the field too. He's a really good baseball player, and it was a treat to watch him for 3 games. But again, to your point, good to see him get on the bus and get out of town.
Look, you're not even discussing when he beat the throw to second yesterday and astonished Labor Tories. So just a whole menu of things that you probably are not going to see again this season. And like I said, we made sure he got on the bus towards the airport, and it's a lot of fun watching though. I think he hit 3 home runs that only got 12 feet off the ground. 2 dented seats. One may have injured a fan. It was some ridiculous stuff, I got to tell you. All right, let's jump into some other things that happened last week. Jackson Jobe, we thought he had a flexor strain. Turns out Jackson Jobe needs TJ. I know you're really great at the detective work. I'll be curious to see if this is going to involve just an internal brace or an internal brace after he gets a new ligament. Regardless, doubt we see Jackson Jobe until spring 2027. How do you think the Tigers will deal with the situation, or is it not that big a deal?
It's a huge deal from a development standpoint, but in terms of what are they going to do about it, what can you do about it? It is what it is at this point. Jackson Jobe is going to miss the rest of the 2025 season. And when you look at the recovery timeline from Tommy John surgery, and we don't know exactly what type of surgery he's getting yet, but the recovery timeline, 12 to 18 months. So you're looking at anywhere between June to December of 2026. And so you're looking at the second half of the 2026 season, if not maybe into the off season. And if it's into the off season or even close to it, then yeah, we're not going to see Jackson Jobe on the mound again for the Tigers until the 2027 season. So in terms of how you move forward, there's really not a whole lot you can do. You got to look internally to the guys that you have to fill spots in the rotation. Kiter Montero, Sawyer Gipson-Long, those are options for sure. Obviously, you can address needs at the trade deadline. Sandy Alcantara would be a very fascinating pickup, I think, for the Tigers if they feel like they can fix him from the Marlins. That's a fascinating. I know the Dodgers are interested in him too. And when the Dodgers are interested in him, you might as well jump on board and be interested as well. That could be an option. But I think generally speaking, you got to look internally, and it's going to be your Sawyer Gipson-Long and your Kiter Montero filling the Jackson Jobe void. I'm not too worried about what it means for the Tigers in 2025 from a performance standpoint, because again, Jackson Jobe, the performance wasn't great. You go and you look at his numbers were not great. He had a lot of learning to do. And that's where I'm concerned though, is it's the development standpoint, because he's going to miss a large chunk of development, and he's going to be asked to come back to the Tigers, maybe in 2027, and be a dude. Tarik Skubal might not be there anymore. Tarik Skubal very well might not be on the Tigers roster anymore in 2027 when Jackson Jobe comes back. And I think it's really easy to say, oh, well, the Tigers have their next ace in Jackson Jobe. Well, he's going to miss a large chunk of development. It's not that easy as saying, oh, this guy's just going to suddenly become an ace. So that's where it really stings the most. I don't think it hurts the Tigers as much on the field as much as it hurts them, when it comes to the development of Jackson Jobe, right? And the growth and the maturation process. He's going to miss a large chunk of time. Maybe he could learn something from this, but it really does suck to see him go down. And again, for it just, initially it was just a flexor strain and it was going to be okay. Maybe he's going to need to take a couple of months and he'll come back and he'll be okay. And then, it turns out he's going to need Tommy John surgery. That's happening early this week with Dr. Keith Meister in Arlington, Texas. And we might not see Jackson Jobe again until 2027. It's a real bummer.
Well, we only had about 50 to 60 more innings of Jackson Jobe in 2025. So I think for 2025, it's not a huge issue. We'll be fascinated to see what the type of surgery is and what he comes back as. let's be really blunt about it. We've talked about it, and other smart baseball people have discussed it. When you're only striking out, when you're only getting whiffs on 10% of your 97 mile an hour four-seamers, it's not a good thing. And when you have the extension that's in the bottom 10% of Major League Baseball, it's also not a good thing. Curious to see if they address either. Curious if they can improve the whiff rate on his four-seamer, because if they do, then you really have something. The other thing that's really, really concerning now pertaining to Jackson Jobe is he's never been healthy for an entire season yet. And if that's not alarming, it should be.
I think it's a little bit alarming. I think it means something. I think it tells you this guy hasn't been able to stay on the field, whether it was the back injury or the hamstring injury or now the elbow injury that needs surgery. He hasn't been able to stay on the field. And this is a guy who throws high velocity. He's not an easy thrower, right? Like he rear back and he's going to throw hard. And when guys throw gas and they have some violent movement in them, like it's worrisome when the injuries pop up year after year after year. That's why I'm concerned about Kerry Carpenter too, who's been nursing the hamstring injury. Kerry Carpenter has never been able to stay healthy for a full season in the big leagues with the Tigers. Like there are reasons why you are concerned when there is a track record of not being able to stay on the field. Jackson Jobe has a track record of not being able to stay on the field. Kerry Carpenter, same thing. Like those are reasons to be concerned. I don't think that it's outlandish to be worried about that. I think that's a very fair thing to be concerned about when you talk about Jackson Jobe, not only now, but also in the future.
I think we're going to put it in the category of just saying. All right, let's get into the big two. Question one of the big two. And I want to say this to you, my partner. Let's talk about this for the last time after we talk about it today. Tarik Skubal went on the Barstool podcast, pardon my take, and he said it would take 10 years, $425 million in free agency to re-sign him. Do you think he's worth that? What do you think of his comments? What do you think of the Tigers' chances of keeping him in Detroit long-term? Let's cover it, and then we're just going to have to wait and see.
I mean, it continues to be a huge topic. Tarik Skubal, the Tigers' contract extension, re-sign. Well, what is it going to be? Back on December 5th, 2024, I wrote a story in the Detroit Free Press with this headline. Could Detroit Tigers ace Tarik Skubal become the first $400 million pitcher in MLB history? And then in early May, ESPN's Jeff Passan suggested the same thing. So yes, I do think 10 years, $425 million for Tarik Skubal could happen on the free agent market after the 2026 season. Remember, Tarik Skubal is a Tiger for the entire 2025 and 2026 season. But after that, he becomes a free agent. And if I had to pick now, and this is entirely my speculation, I think he'll ultimately sign with the Los Angeles Dodgers for various reasons we'll discuss down the road. I also think the New York Yankees, New York Mets, Los Angeles Angels, Toronto Blue Jays, San Diego Padres, all of those teams could be involved in a bidding war for Skubal when he gets to free agency. But what fascinates me is Tarik Skubal always deferred to his agent, Scott Boras, when discussing anything about his contract situation. The Tigers, meanwhile, they've always elected to just stay silent about things. But that tune has changed from both sides recently. You got Tarik going on his podcast saying that it sounds good. You know, when a $425 million contract is suggested to him, right? He says, hey, it sounds good. And then you got Scott Harris talking about how the Tigers, it takes two sides to get a deal done. It's not just as easy as sliding over the blank check and having him sign it. Like you're having both of these guys deviate from the norm. Tarik Skubal always deferring to Scott Boras, and then Scott Harris saying, yeah, we're going to stay quiet about any contract negotiations. You got Scott Harris saying a little bit more. You got Tarik Skubal saying a little bit more. So you got both these guys saying more than ever before. I don't think that that's a good thing for the chances of a contract extension. Ideally, you want these two sides to be working on things behind the scenes. But right now, they're kind of out in the open. Like they're kind of just tossing some things around, doing it pretty publicly. That makes it very clear that there's absolutely no progress towards a Tarik Skubal extension. Remember, the Tigers already tried and failed to sign him to an extension. I reported that back in November 2024. I've heard from multiple people that it was for 4 years. So buying out his final 2 years of salary arbitration in 2025 and 2026, and then paying him for an additional 2 years. So that would keep him under contract through the 2028 season or through his age 31 season. I reported it as a non-competitive offer because it wasn't a competitive offer. So that's where things are at. 2 free agent years for the Tigers. Tarik Skubal, however, he said he wants to be locked up through the 2036 season, a 10-year contract after he becomes a free agent following the 2026 season. So that's the gap between the two sides here, about 8 years. 2028 for the Tigers, 2036 for Skubal. Like, I think that tells you everything you need to know about where things are at right now. I don't think Tarik Skubal and the Tigers will agree to a contract extension. And I do think Tarik Skubal will get more than $400 million on the open market in free agency after the 2026 season. And that brings me to a bigger conversation about this. It's the Chris Ilitch conversation, the owner of the Detroit Tigers. What's the owner involvement here? You go look at Steve Cohen with the New York Mets. Like, Juan Soto signed for $765 million because Steve Cohen wanted it to happen. Is Chris Ilitch going to pick up the phone, call Scott Boras, and say, what's it going to take to get this deal done? And I think that's what ultimately could separate the Tigers and other bidders once Tarik Skubal eventually becomes a free agent. Like, is Chris Ilitch going to be picking up the phone saying, what's it going to take to get this done? Because I understand if Scott Harris, the Tigers president of baseball operations, doesn't want to spend $400 million for a starting pitcher. Like, I get that. I totally get that. So if that's the case, isn't this up to Chris Ilitch to step in and say, no. Let me take care of this. I'll make sure Tarik Skubal's a Tiger for life. This one's on me. I got this. Because that's what Steve Cohen would do, right? And so I think, again, there are a lot of people on planet Earth. You and me, we are two people on this earth. There are a lot of people. But aside from Tarik Skubal himself, there is only one other person who can get a Tarik Skubal extension done now. It's Chris Ilitch. So I think it's important to keep that in mind as we move forward, inching closer to November 2026 when Tarik Skubal becomes a free agent. We are about 500 days away from that right now. So we got a long ways to go. I'm sure we're going to talk about this a lot more, but I do think it is important to mention Chris Ilitch could get this done right here, right now.
Well, as far as getting it done right here, right now, that would be the smart thing to do. Overpay him for these 2 years, or actually overpay him for 2026 as one of the years, because the shorter you can make the contract essentially in his prime, the better. Paying 39-year-old Tarik Skubal $45 million seems like a bad idea. We already know this from Miguel Cabrera and pretty much every other of the largest contracts ever given any baseball player, regardless of position.
So my point is some team will, whether it's the Dodgers or the Mets, some team will pay Tarik Skubal that much money that late into his career if he continues this type of performance and stays healthy, which is exactly how things are trending.
Let me make this short and sweet for you. Based upon what we see in the Scott Harris, Chris Ilitch regime, Tarik Skubal's not going to be a Detroit Tiger. They always feel like they have a plan. They have a strategy. They have a way they manage their roster and how they build it and the payroll they want to run. They're not going to buy into the idea of wasting 3 or 4 years at the back end of a contract at $45 million and hamstringing their capacity to win, knowing that it's dicey to give any player a contract in his 35 to 39-year-old years. And it's really dicey to give it to a pitcher that has both had TJ and flexor tendon issues. At the same time, you do have to ask yourself, what has the Harris regime been really, really good at? At the fringes, tremendous. Talent evaluation, a 10. Drafting, so far, really, really good. Developing pitching that you either traded for or drafted, not good. Haven't really done it yet. So until they do it, they may think they can replace it. It's not so far a track record that says they can replace it. Now, that's not a criticism. That's just a resume. And the resume says that's what it is. Once they do it, I'll change my mind about it. I'm a show me kind of guy. Ev, you a show me kind of guy?
Let's see it.
I hear you. All right. I mean, we're not going to find out what's going to happen with Tarik Skubal, not in the near future. And I just don't think it's a Chris Ilitch kind of way of doing business. That's not a criticism. That's just a choice. The question is, what are you going to replace it with? They got position players to replace it with. They don't have pitchers yet. All right, let's get into question 2 of the big 2. And we have lots of facts for this one. In the last 30 days, since May 16th, the Tigers are 17-12. You would think the way the fan base is acting, they were 12-17. The record is good, but what problems are just part of the ebbs and flows of a season and what needs to be addressed before it's too late? So let's go over a few things. Last 30 days, Tigers are 17-12. As hitters, they are a 94 WRC plus. I think that is 22nd in baseball. They scored 107 runs, also 22nd in baseball. They have a 7.7% walk rate, 27th in baseball. And remember, the Tigers hit well when they walk, and they're not walking. One person in particular is not walking. We're going to address that. However, they got a 10.7% barrel rate, which is top 10 in baseball. They also have a 4.81 bullpen ERA in the last 30 days. That's ugly. And they have a bunch of relievers not either throwing well or getting demoted or getting hurt. And they have a 7.2 strikeout per 9 K rate. That's 29th in baseball. Ding, ding, ding. And they stopped doing the little things, the two things AJ Hinch relies on most, which are defense, and they are not walking. So the bullpen's bad. The defense, the last week, not great. They stopped walking. Now, the last thing I'm going to say before my rant is finished is the Yankees, the Mets, the Twins, the Royals, and the Guardians all got swept this weekend. So is the malady of the Tigers not playing crisp baseball unusual? I guess not. So, all right, Ev, your turn.
Since May 16th, Tigers ranked 20th in total offense, first in starting pitching ERA, and 25th in bullpen ERA. You look at adding in what they did on Sunday, it's a 96 WRC plus on offense, a 2.53 ERA in the rotation, and a 4.68 ERA in the bullpen. For the starting rotation, what's there to talk about anymore? Those guys have been excellent. Tarik Skubal's got a 1.99 ERA. It's just ridiculous. We've also seen some more pitching chaos recently where there's an opener followed by a bulk reliever. We've seen Kiter Montero and Sawyer Gipson-Long as the traditional starters who now are serving as these bulk relievers. It's a really good strategy, helps them combat teams with a lot of left-handed hitters in the lineup. We saw it against the Orioles. We saw it again against the Reds. Really like that strategy. It's good the Tigers can go to that when they need to. The rotation as a whole has been really good. For the offense, though, we've already seen a little bit of addition by subtraction with the Andy Ibanez roster move. Maybe there's more coming with Trey Sweeney struggling the way that he is. The offense, though, has been pretty solid. You got Riley Green, Gleyber Torres, Dylan Dingler, Colt Keith, Spencer Torkelson, all above average performers since May 16th. You also got Wenzel Perez and Zach McKinstry. They've been above average performers in smaller sample sizes since May 16th. But there's dead weight with Trey Sweeney. And then there's the two surprises for me. You got Kerry Carpenter and Parker Meadows. Those guys aren't hitting. I'm not worried about Parker because he's drawing walks. I'm getting a little bit concerned about Kerry Carpenter, though, because this has dragged on for a while now. And I don't know if it's related to the fact that he can't keep his hamstrings healthy and they're literally hanging on by a thread at this point, but he's chasing a lot. And while he still makes decent contact, even on pitches out of the zone, he's just not doing damage like the Kerry Bonds that we're used to seeing. He's striking out only 20% of the time. That's no big deal, but he never walks. The chase rate is out of control. And yeah, that walk rate, 2% for the season is really, really alarming. And he's just not driving pitches like we saw him do last year. And then for the bullpen, we've also seen some addition by subtraction. John Brebbia is gone. Bo Brisky is in Toledo. Brennan Hanafy could be next. Tyler Holton is safe. Don't worry about him. But again, he needs to pick it up. I have no idea where the Tigers would be without Brant Hurter's success because Tyler Holton has been struggling and Tyler Holton is that left-handed reliever who can take down multiple innings. So is Brant Hurter. Imagine if both of those guys were putting up, top of the line type performances. The Tigers bullpen would be a lot more solidified right now than it is as we sit here today. You need Brant Hurter and Tyler Holton. Tyler Holton's been the best reliever in baseball for the last 2 seasons. You look at what he did in 2023 and 2024, but right now he is just not the same reliever that he was. We've seen maybe some positive trends recently, but at the same time, he's got to pick it up and he's got to get back to old Tyler Holton because he is truly an X factor as a guy who could open one day. He could take down multiple innings the next day. He could pitch the 9th inning. After that, he was a do-it-all type of reliever for the Tigers last year. They don't have somebody like that. Brant Hurter can be that guy, and he's shown flashes of being that guy. But Brant Hurter hasn't pitched the 9th inning in a scoreless game, right? He hasn't handled the big moment yet. Tyler Holton, he's equipped to handle the big moment, but the performance is not there right now. Really need him to get turning things around. So I think that's a change that really needs to happen for the Tigers to get back on track. You've got to see the bullpen improve. That's concerning for sure. The offense, I'm not as concerned because again, like I said, you still have guys like Riley Green and Gleyber Torres, Dylan Dingler, Colt Keith, Spencer Torkelson. They are performing. You're getting contributions from Wenzel Perez and Zach McKinstry. There are some good things happening on offense that don't really indicate a below average offense, if that makes sense. So I'm not as concerned about the offense. I have zero concerns about the rotation. Absolutely dynamite. And that's without even Reese Olson. And that's without Jackson Jobe being a Jackson Jobe type pitcher that we expected. He struggled and then he got hurt. Jackson Jobe had never lived up to the hype as the top pitching prospect in baseball this year, and the rotation still has been solid. So I think when you consider those things, offense is good, rotation is good, but that bullpen is a real concern, and it really does need to get cleaned up, Mark.
All right, so let's address a few things. First of all, I left something out from this weekend that was kind of alarming, which was part of the Hinch-Fetter mantra. And if you just look, I think they have the lowest walk rate in baseball. They walked people this weekend, and it was highly unusual to see them do that. Jack Flaherty, 5 walks, walked the bases loaded, was really good for 4 innings, and then just basically the wheels came off. I'm going to just chalk that up to a bad day for Jack Flaherty because he's been really, really good lately, and it's one bad inning. Kerry Carpenter, let's address this. 202, 228, 382 in the last 30 days. 4 homers, 6 RBIs. 3 homers, 5 RBIs came in 1 game. So 1 homer, 1 RBI in the last 30 days besides 1 game. So that means he's driven in 0 runs with a base hit or a sacrifice fly in 30 days. I mean, come on. What's up with that? He's walked twice in 94 plate appearances. Do you think maybe there's a correlation between not protecting the strike zone and swinging at strikes and struggling? It's a pretty simple equation here. And guess what? I bet you they're talking to him a lot about it. It has 0 to do with his hamstring. It has everything to do with what's above his neck. You got to change his approach. Kerry Carpenter walking 7% of the time, which is still not a lot, is what he needs to do to be good Kerry Carpenter. I mean, this got to stop, okay? As far as the bullpen goes, look, not new. Got to address it. Guy's not performing, kind of hurt. They need to go out and make deals. Now, let me say something about that because we're going to have a long talk about that after the break. But Tyler Holton, I'm actually weirdly kind of encouraged about what I've seen in the last 4 or 5 outings. Good yesterday. And the outing previous to that, he was also very good. He gave up a homer, but the 4 hitters he faced, aside from the homer, where he was ahead 1-2 and then gave up a homer, the other 3 hitters, he was really good. His command seems to be getting more precise. And precise command, Tyler Holton, is Tyler Holton. So if he can revert back to form, and I think he can, that answers some of the questions there. Now, we do have a Will Vest question. We're going to talk about that after the break. But, the bottom line is these are ebbs and flows of the season. I'm less worried about the hitting, especially if they can fix Kerry Carpenter. But I like Spencer Torkelson to be a little less streaky. Yes. Otherwise, he's killing people. He's getting leverage hits all day, all night. But I like Riley Green to strike out less. Yeah, probably don't think that's happening this year. And Riley Green just keeps mashing. He's striking out and mashing. I'll take that. So, I'm less concerned than you are. They need to get bullpen help, and I think the rest will work itself out. But this is incumbent upon Scott Harris to fix this. This is something he has never had to do before. He's going to have to do it now. He's never been the leader. He's never been in first place, and he's never had issues that need repair at the major league level during a season. We're going to find out if he's up to the task, if his asks are too much, or if he can navigate it. And that's not a criticism. It's just, I want to see what's up. How about you?
Time will tell, Mark. Time will tell. You're right. No, seriously though, this is a situation where you're spot on. Like Scott Harris has never been in this situation before, really as it pertains to the trade deadline as a whole. And the question is going to become, trade deadline is approaching. It's 6 p.m., July 31st. We still have a little bit of time, but it's coming. It's coming up quick. And how is Scott Harris going to handle this? Is he going to prospect hoard? Is he going to try to win the World Series? Will he make moves before the trade deadline to try to fix some things now as opposed to, waiting for a month and a half? Because things are going to get worse if nothing changes, right? Like things are going to get worse if they do not change. But when it comes to the trade deadline, is he going to prospect hoard? Is he going to try to win the World Series? Like we've never seen Scott Harris in this situation. We've seen him lose at the trade deadline as a seller. We've seen him win at the trade deadline as a seller. But we've never seen him as a buyer. We've never seen him in first place. So what's it going to be? Time will tell.
Time will tell. It doesn't mean he can't do it. It just means he needs to do it. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in 6 minutes. All right, Will Vest suffered a pinky finger injury, or at least discomfort in his pinky. in a proactive way. They removed him. Tell me what you know. Nobody's better at finding these things out than you. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, still probably have some digging to do here, but Will Vest's pinky was bothering him in the 8th inning of Sunday's game against the Reds. He allowed 3 unearned runs. Haven't heard from Vest. Manager AJ Hinch didn't say much. They still had some tests to do. As of post-game Sunday, I expect to know more before Tuesday's game. He's either fine or he's going to the injured list. Like, it's going to be one of those two things. And there is concern because he did leave the game after throwing a wild pitch in the 8th inning. So it seems like something happened when he was out there on the mound. If he lands on the injured list, Mark, even if it's for 15 days, like, that's a huge loss for the Tigers. Will Vest lead the Tigers with 12 saves. He has a 1.80 ERA. He's thrown 35 innings. He limits walks, gets strikeouts, generates whiffs, induces ground balls, and his fastball velocity sits around 97 miles an hour. He is everything you could ask for in a closer type of pitcher. He gets groundouts at an elite rate. He doesn't walk batters, and he misses bats at an above average clip. That's everything that you would want from a reliever. And now he could be sidelined. And that leaves you with Tommy Kahnle as your lone 9th inning guy. And then who's your next best reliever? Chase Lee? Like, is Chase Lee really going to be the guy setting up Tommy Kahnle on a path to win for AJ Hinch? And that's something else too, right? You better hope Will Vest is healthy here because AJ Hinch talks about the path to a win quite often. And when you started the season, it was like you had Tyler Holton, you had Bo Brisky, and you had Tommy Kahnle and Will Vest, and all these guys were part of a path to winning games. You know, when you have the lead in the 6th inning, what's your path to win? It was those guys. Tommy Kahnle is the only one left right now if Will Vest really is down. So what does the path to win really look like? And is AJ Hinch going to be confident in that path to win? I don't know that he can be unless the Tigers go out and find some external solutions or internal solutions from the minor leagues. But yeah, you better hope Will Vest is healthy. Right now, we don't know a whole lot. And you look at even the finger injury that, Reese Olson had, right? Reese Olson has a finger injury and it's supposed to be no big deal. He's going to make his next start, no worries. And then it's like, oh, okay, he's got to go on the injured list. And then it's going to be okay. It'll be the minimum, 15 days, no big deal. It's been over a month since Reese Olson has started for the Detroit Tigers because the finger issue is still bothering him. He's still not able to throw his changeups in competitive games, in competitive situations. That's an issue. So you better hope that this is not the same situation with Will Vest because Will Vest is a guy, I know it's just a pinky, but still, every little bit matters. And Will Vest, he's going to need it all to be healthy and be on the field and to put up his best performance. He's been such an X factor for the Tigers this year out of the bullpen. I cannot imagine a life without Will Vest.
Let's hope Will Vest is okay. Let's hope if Will Vest is not okay, that 15 days will heal up what ails you. I know a little bit about pitching injuries, and I can tell you most pitching injuries are what are called repetitive use injuries. So it's throwing, it's gripping, it's all those things. I mean, Reese Olson has a sore finger because he uses it as part of his changeup. It's a repetitive use injury. The terrifying thing about Will Vest is that is not a repetitive use injury. Your pinky doesn't get used when you're throwing a baseball. What it means is something else is causing issues with his pinky, and I don't even want to discuss what those things can be. They start with UCL and rhyme with UCL. So when your fingers start getting numb, it's not a good thing. Usually has to do with your elbow, but I'm going to wait and see. I'm not a doctor. I only play one on TV. I'm going to wait and see. But as we discussed earlier, Scott, it's time, man. It's time to show us what you got because you need to go start mining for relievers. And it can't just be relievers that you think you can improve that are on the fringes. It's going to have to be something that maybe is really good, that maybe isn't having a great season. Mason Miller, Felix Bautista, something along those lines maybe that you're not going to pay $1 for, but maybe you can acquire in a deal that you might find reasonable. That being said, we shall see what happens with Will Vest. This transitions us to the big question. The Tigers bullpen ranks 12th in Major League Baseball in ERA for the entire season. It used to be in the top 10 or the top 8. It also ranks 25th in Major League Baseball with a 4.68 ERA in the past 30 days. That's since May 16th. House President of Baseball Operations Scott Harris going to fix the problem. Ev, we both always have ideas. There's some names that always seem to pop up. Let's review them Let's discuss the viability of how they can acquire them. Let's dig into it.
No, Mark, take it away, because trade a reliever is exactly the way in which they need to go about this, because you take a look at what they have in the minor leagues. You go down to AAA Toledo and you say, okay, Matt Manning, Dylan Smith, are they coming to save the day? Don't think so. How about the rehabbing guys? Tyler Madison, Alex Lang? Nah, probably not. Maybe Bo Brisky bounces back. Sure, that's possible. Maybe Alex Cobb gets an opportunity out of the bullpen and is able to work in shorter spurts rather than being a starter. But are we really going to rely on Alex Cobb to save the day? No way. Haven't seen him pitch yet this year. Maybe Troy Melton, who currently working as a starter, maybe he transitions to the bullpen to help the Tigers. He's got some really nasty stuff. I like that arm. I think he's on the right track. And that's somebody that I'd be fascinated to see in short spurts out of the bullpen. He could be helpful. But is that really the answer? No. And again, to your point, you can go and you can find bargain bin, free agents. You can go find bargain bin trades and go get those guys and try to fix them. You can go down to the minor leagues and say, all right, Matt Manning, Dylan Smith, Tyler Madison, Alex Lang, Bo Brisky, Alex Cobb, Troy Melton. You can look down that route as well. But those aren't legit dudes that are going to shore up the issue. Those are not guys that you can truly count on and rely on. And let's not forget, this is a team that has the best record in baseball. This is a team that has a chance to win the World Series. Don't forget that, Tigers fans. Don't forget that. When we approach the trade deadline and you talk about expectations and what you want to see from this front office, do not forget that this team has a chance to win the World Series for the first time since 1984. Do not forget that. And that's important now, just as it's important on July 31st when the trade deadline rolls around. What are the Tigers going to do right now to ensure that they continue on the trajectory of having a chance to win the World Series for the first time since 1984? And I'm telling you, it's not Matt Manning or Dylan Smith or Tyler Madison or Alex Lang or Bo Brisky or Alex Cobb, who has hip injuries now on both hips. Both hips for Alex Cobb are injured, but maybe he works better out of the bullpen. He is not the answer. Troy Melton could be a really good pitcher for them. Probably has number 3 starter upside. Not the answer for them this year out of the bullpen. You need to go and get a legit dude. And with that being said, Mark, lay it out there for me, because there are some real names the Tigers could go out and they could get that would make significant impact, whether Will Vest is healthy or not. You got to go out and you got to get some impact arms in the bullpen. Guys that can pitch the 7th, 8th, 9th innings. Guys that have been there, done that. Guys that throw 99 miles an hour with a 30% whiff rate. Miss me some bats, throw me some velo, and let's have a party, because that's exactly what the Tigers need to be targeting. They need to go after guys like that if they want to be having that parade in Detroit for winning the World Series. But they got to do it now. That starts now.
All right. So let's throw out some names and throw out some hypothetical people that might be included in deals. It's never fun to do this, but we're going to do it anyway. Top of my list, been at the top of my list since last year, Seth Halverson, Colorado Rockies, 3rd best fastball in baseball. If you take away 2 of his outings this year, he's been really, really good. He would be a guy I think they could also improve if they got him. What's it going to cost? Hard to know. Might cost somebody like Jose Briseño. Willing to trade Jose Briseño for Scott Halverson. Probably got to take back German Marquez in a deal like that at $400,000 a week. We do know the Manforts in Colorado are cheaper, maybe the cheapest team in baseball after Tampa. That's at the top of my list. It's got a lot of team control. Think they can optimize him. Think he'd be great in leverage. They also have Jake Bird. They could discuss that. Secondary guys like Yainer Cano, who was really good for the last 2 years for Baltimore. Baltimore's pretty toasted, pretty obtainable. You also have Felix Bautista there, who's really good, a lot more expensive. Here's a question. Would you trade a player like Colt Keith for Mason Miller on the Sacramento A's? Because that's probably what it takes as a beginning discussion. I'm kind of curious your thoughts about that one, Ev, and you can answer me in a second. We also got Ryan Hensley on the Cardinals, is going to be a free agent. Somebody nobody really mentions too often. Somebody they should be discussing. These are all guys. Look, if you think you're getting a lot for Jace Young. Jace Young has a lower OPS right now than Ryan Kreidler. So you got Jace Young, you got Colt Keith. He's a redundant player and a really good player. You got Hao-Yu Lee, you got Anderson, all second basemen. You got Jordan Hamm, you got Kiter Montero, you got Tyrone Lorenzo. Those are all players I'm sure they find expendable. The question is, how attractive are they to other teams? What's your ideas of?
I think the name Colt Keith is so fascinating in this conversation because, right, like you never think the Tigers would want to trade Colt Keith. He's young, he's developing, he's still improving. Like there's a lot of, bright things in his future, and no doubt about it. But at the same time, the contract that he has, and again, it was such a team-friendly deal that like there are teams that are crying poor that would love to take on a Colt Keith type of contract. I'm not saying that it has to be for Mason Miller, but like, if you wanted to really go out and get a piece, whether it was at the trade deadline or whether it was in the offseason or whether it's, a year from now, 2 years from now, like Colt Keith is a very fascinating trade candidate that the Tigers could part ways with because of the way his contract is structured. It's $3.8 million this year. It's $4.3 million in 2026, $5.3 million in 2028, $5.3 million in 2029. And then when 2030 rolls around, there's a $10 million team option, and then a $13 million team option for 2031, and then a $15 million team option for 2032. Colt Keith, I think, is going to be worth $10 million in 2030 with inflation and then with, obviously performance and the way that he's trending. I think he has a chance to be worth that, where any team would pick that up for sure. But if for some reason he's not, the buyout on that is only like $2.6 million. And then if you decide, okay, yep, we're going to take Colt Keith for $10 million in 2030, and you say, okay, 2031 is now approaching and the team option is kicked up to $13 million, the buyout on that is only $1 million. A team could buy out Colt Keith for $1 million if they didn't want him going into his age 29 season for 2031. Like this is such a team-friendly contract that it does make me curious. I don't know if they would want to burn such a team-friendly contract on somebody like Mason Miller. Maybe you go after a much bigger piece. Maybe you find your Tarik Skubal replacement that way. I'm not saying that that's exactly what's going to happen, but I just think that you bringing up the name Colt Keith is such a fascinating way to look at how his contract is structured, how old he is, 23, going on 24, be 24, this August, and the way that he's trending. So Colt Keith is a really good player. Colt Keith is hitting about 250 now, but like the power still isn't there. Like what if the power never develops, Mark? What if he never finds a position? What if he can't play first, second, or third? Like what if he's a DH without much power? What if that's the end result for Colt Keith is a DH who hits, 270 with really not a whole lot of power. Now, I think he's going to be much more than that. I think Colt Keith can play second base. I think he'll be able to play a little third base. I think he can play some first base. I think he will get to a point in his career where he hits 20 home runs. And I think the batting average could be, anywhere to 270, maybe even more than that. But what if it's not, is my point. Maybe you do part ways with him and make a deal. I just think that's a very fascinating way of looking at it. And then to get back to your main target, Seth Halverson, I love him. Fastball averages 100 miles an hour. He misses bats at a 30% clip. Also, he keeps the ball on the ground. It's like a 55, 56% ground ball rate. He's got a lead extension. Like I said, he misses bats. He throws hard. The walks are a little bit concerning, but at the same time, like he's putting up the numbers that he's putting up in Coors Field. So that's in Denver where the ball is going to fly, but he's keeping the ball on the ground. I think that only bodes well for him if he were to pitch somewhere like Comerica Park, a pitcher-friendly ballpark. I really like Seth Halverson. I've got him circled. But yeah, the question is, what is it going to take? Seth Halverson's still young in his career. How much do the Rockies value him in the long term of Seth Halverson versus the long term of a prospect who's never shown he can perform at the big league level? You mentioned Jose Briceño. Jose Briceño's never shown that he can perform at the big league level. We have no idea if he will be productive. We do know Seth Halverson can be very good in the big leagues. We've already seen it. So how do the Rockies view that, right? That's another way of looking at it. So these are all great conversations to have. We got a ways to go. July 31st is the trade deadline. It's going to be fascinating, but like we've talked about, the Tigers need to address this now because again, this is a World Series caliber team. Let's not wait too long to make some changes.
All right. Where else do you think the Tigers need to look for upgrades before the July 31st trade deadline?
They need a bat. There's no question they need a bat. Marcell Ozuna from the Atlanta Braves. I love that name because of all the things that he does. He hits for power. He draws walks. He limits strikeouts. He's got a nice batting average. Like this guy gets on base. He hits for power and he's a tough at bat. He is everything that the Tigers want their hitters to be and everything that the Tigers have in store, right? That is what they preach. They preach walks, power, finding your pitch in your part of the zone and doing damage on it. Marcell Ozuna does that very well. One problem. Marcell Ozuna hasn't played the outfield since 2022. That's a major problem. So if you're going to commit to Kerry Carpenter in right field, or if you think that Kerry Carpenter is going to get hurt because he's never been healthy for a full season in his big league career, then maybe this makes sense. Marcell Ozuna for The rest of the 2025 season, it is a 2-month, 3-month rental. And, it's insurance. In case Kerry Carpenter gets hurt, it's a big bat in the lineup. It can be very helpful. But again, it does create that logjam where the Tigers already have too many designated hitters on their team. You add another designated hitter in there, it's going to be tough to find playing time for all these guys unless somebody gets hurt, like Kerry Carpenter, or you really commit to Kerry Carpenter, who has an injured hamstring, playing in right field. So I love Marcell Ozuna as the player, but I'm not so sure about the fit. And then the other name is Bo Bichette from the Toronto Blue Jays. One problem there, though, the Blue Jays are 5 games above 500, but the Toronto Blue Jays, they just went into a situation where they signed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to a 14-year, $500 million contract extension. And they've only got Bo Bichette through the 2025 season. So if there's a time to win now with Vladdy as opposed to winning later, it's winning right now. Like you got to win now. So if they feel like they have a chance, and as of right now, they are 5 games above 500, it makes sense for them to hold on to Bo Bichette. Additionally, though, if they feel like they could get enough pieces to allow for sustainable winning with Vlad Jr., again, it's a 14-year, $500 million contract. He's going to be around for a long time. That's your franchise player. If you want to try to win in 2026, 2027, 2028 before Vlad Jr. is too old, well, then maybe you move Bo Bichette no matter where you're at. And you say, okay, we're going to try to piece it together and get to the finish line this year, but let's really try to restock and retool for the future. You also have a guy like Nolan Arenado from St. Louis Cardinals. Tigers took the tires on him in the offseason. I think that's still a name that could make some sense. The Cardinals right now, they are 2 games above 500, but I do think that they are committed to selling at the trade deadline just because when you consider there's going to be a shift from John Mozeliak to Chaim Bloom in that front office. Nolan Arenado is not part of the St. Louis Cardinals' future, their long-term future. So if there is an opportunity to trade him now, and if the Cardinals are going to eat a ton of that money, that would make sense for me if I'm the Detroit Tigers. And I know that I need to upgrade my left side of the infield. They got to get better at shortstop or third base. You can count on Javi Baez at one of those 2 spots, but Javi Baez can't play both those spots. And Javi Baez, he is prone to, up and down streaks, right? He's not going to be a 300 hitter like we saw him earlier in the year. He's cooled off. Eugenio Suarez, that's another name. Arizona Diamondbacks. The D-backs are 1 game above 500, but there are a lot of things that I hate about Eugenio Suarez. I think that he is a fine ball player as a whole, but there are things that I do not like at all. He has a ton of power, 13 home runs in 71 games. That's impressive. But it's a .233 batting average right now for him. That's not any good. I don't like that. I don't like a .233 batting average. Also, 21 walks to 76 strikeouts. I don't like that very much either. I don't like a strikeout rate that's at 26, 27%. That's not my cup of tea. A few years ago, it was 31%. So if Eugenio Suarez is going to come to Comerica Park, try to hit a bunch of home runs, and he's going to turn into a 30% strikeout rate kind of guy, don't sign me up from that. I want to run away from that. So I like the power. I think it is an option. But at the same time, when you consider what the Tigers preach, they preach more Marcell Ozuna than Eugenio Suarez. And that's kind of where I'm at in that debate. But again, Eugenio Suarez, I don't like the player as much, but I love the fit. Marcell Ozuna, love the player, don't like the fit as much. Bo Bichette, Nolan Arenado, somewhere in between. But I think the Tigers certainly need to upgrade their offense at the trade deadline. They need a little bit of an extra boost. That's where I think they're at right now.
I think Gino Suarez is a better pick than you think, especially, in the current circumstance. He's been ridiculously hot. I do think Arizona typically pretty shrewd about making deals. They're also pretty good, period. So I'm not so sure that it's going to be easy to get a Gino Suarez, but he would fit what they're doing pretty well. I got a weird question for you. I've brought it up a few times. I brought it up even before the season started, but let's compare and contrast something, because how much worse of a player today is Kevin McGonigal than Bo Bichette?
And I think that's a fair point. We've talked about this before, and I think we need to go back to that well again. Maybe Kevin McGonigal is part of the solution here. Maybe Kevin McGonigal, it's crazy to think about because Kevin McGonigal is so young. He's so inexperienced at the minor league level. He has a lot to learn still along the way, but at the same time, Mark, he is a pure hitter. He is a pure hitter. Kevin McGonigal can hit, and he's shown that he can hit at the lower levels. And we'll see. He's got to show that he can hit in Double-A Erie. He's got to show that he can hit in Triple-A Toledo maybe, but maybe not. Maybe he's the guy who makes that jump from Double-A to the big leagues if all goes well with the Seawolves, and we see him later on the year. But yeah, Kevin McGonigal, he's hitting .384 in the minor leagues, 18 walks, 13 strikeouts, only 26 games. Maybe not a ton of power, but if Kevin McGonigal can come to the big leagues, I mean, he's hitting .415 in West Michigan right now. .415 in West Michigan with 3 home runs in 20 games. He's got 15 walks to 12 strikeouts. Like, Mark, maybe Kevin McGonigal is part of the solution. Maybe he is. And it sounds crazy to talk about because this guy has only played 121 games in the minor leagues. He's only played 34 games at the high A level, but he is just that type of a pure hitter that maybe it makes sense. I mean, Scott Harris has talked about there being no untouchables at the trade deadline, but if I'm in charge, I got 2 of them, and it's Kevin McGonigal and Bryce Rayner. You can part ways with Max Clark and be okay. You can part ways with Tyrone Lorenzo, Josue Briseño, but Kevin McGonigal could be a cornerstone type of player, and maybe we get things started as soon as 2025. And I don't think it's going to be at the deadline, but maybe he could come up at some point in September. Maybe he could be a September 1st call-up if all goes well in Erie. Is that crazy to say?
No.
If it sounds so crazy, it sounds crazy, though.
Crazy.
It sounds like I'm a lunatic. I feel like I'm crazy for saying that.
Well, I've been saying it since April.
But that was pre-injury. He got hurt. He's barely played. That's why it sounds crazy to me. That's why it seems wild.
So let me ask you a question. Better contact, Bo Bichette, Kevin McGonigal?
It's unfair to ask that question and expect a real answer because we haven't seen Kevin McGonigal in the big leagues.
Okay.
It's a little bit unfair. I think raw ability, give me Kevin McGonigal.
Bo Bichette, defensive wizard or slightly subpar defensive shortstop?
I think Bo Bichette's probably an average shortstop, but that's just
I think he's probably below average, and I think
But Kevin McGonigal's below average too. And Kevin McGonigal's not going to step up. He's not going to step up and play shortstop on day one either, like I said. And we don't even know if Kevin McGonigal can play third base. Is Kevin McGonigal a better fit for second? Maybe he fits better at second base, and you still have that logjam on the right side. But from a bat standpoint, which is what I never said the Tigers needed a shortstop or a third baseman. I said they need a bat. Mm-hmm. Kevin McGonigal, he is a bat.
All I can say to you is what I do trust is I trust the organization that Scott Harris has put together, guys like Ryan Garko. I trust them to make these decisions because the Bo Bichette question has to beg the Kevin McGonigal question. All right, we're going to take our last break. We'll be back in 60. All right, Ev, the AllStar break. Voting closes on July 2nd. Tigers are the best team in baseball. What can we expect? How many Tigers are going to represent them? And how's the voting going?
Yeah, the AllStar voting is underway. It's been underway since June 4th. The voting closes on July 2nd. And then in mid-July, we have the Midsummer Classic, the All-Star game. It happens in Atlanta at Truist Park. The Tigers are going to have multiple All-Stars this year. They're going to have one for sure, and it's Tarik Skubal. He's a lock. But I actually have 2 locks, and we don't know where voting is at yet. We should be getting an update on fan voting, which will be the first update at some point here in the near future. But Tarik Skubal is my lock, and I have a second lock, and it's Gleyber Torres. Gleyber Torres, he's been incredible this year. The batting average is great. The on-base percentage, go look at the on-base percentage, people. It's out of this world. More walks than strikeouts. A little bit of pop in the bat, but you know what? I love the on-base percentage. He gets on base. He is a problem for opposing teams. And that's why I think he's going to be a lock for the All-Star game. He is the best second baseman in the American League. Unless fans decide to suddenly say, hey, let's put Jose Altuve in that spot, which I think would be total BS because Jose Altuve has been an outfielder all year long, and he should be treated as such when it comes to All-Star game voting. So I've got 2 locks, Tarik Skubal, Gleyber Torres. And Tarik Skubal, by the way, he needs to be the starter this year. Bruce Bochy snubbed him last year. Bruce Bochy went with Corbin Burns. Aaron Boone, this is up to you. Tarik Skubal, make him your All-Star starter. There should be no question about it in 2025. Gleyber Torres, I think he could also start for the American League on the All-Star team. And then you got guys that are on the bubble. Dylan Dingler, Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green. Those are my 3 bubble players for the All-Star game. I think 2 of those 3 get in, but I don't think all 3 of them get in. So if you had to pick between Dylan Dingler, Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green, who do you think is most likely to get in? For me, I think it might just be Tork and Green. And Dylan Dingler, he might not get the love from the fans and might not get the love from his peers because he is so new to the big leagues. Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green, those are more of established names. So when the commissioner's office is deciding and when, their peers, fellow players around the league are voting and when fans are voting, I think fans are going to be more inclined to vote Tork and Green than they are to vote Dylan Dingler just because Dylan Dingler hasn't been around as much. But Dylan Dingler has been one of the best catchers in the American League. You look at it's Cal Raleigh, number 1. Carlos Narvaez, number 2. Dylan Dingler, number 3 in the American League. Dylan Dingler has been an excellent catcher. Logan O'Hoppe mixed in there as well, but Dylan Dingler has been great. I think he deserves a chance. I just don't know if he's going to get it. And then I got guys on the outside looking in. Javier Baez, Zach McKinstry, Tommy Kahnle, Will Vest, Casey Mize. I don't think any of those guys get it. Will Vest, obviously he's hurt now, but even pre-injury, right? Like, not enough saves. Tommy Kahnle, not enough saves. When you look at the commissioner's office and they do pick, guys, you got the White Sox. The White Sox need an all-star and it's going to be a reliever, right? Like, that's just how those things kind of work. And it's normally the reliever who has the most saves. Look at, why was Gregory Soto a 2-time all-star, right? Because he had the most saves on a bad team. So we'll see a lot of those. So I don't think Will Vest or Tommy Kahnle get in. But Mark, I am curious, Dylan Dingler, Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green, of those 3, who do you think is an all-star?
All 3. I don't think you can leave Ding off. Too good. I think the players know he's too good. I think the guy on the bubble probably is Torque, just because there's a pretty decent amount of decent first basemen. I think Riley Green's a lock, but should be fascinating. Hard to speculate. A lot of politics involved. Never know who they need to make room for. I mean, Logan O'Hoppe might be the only Angels rep that could kill Ding. As far as the White Sox, I got to think Shane Smith.
Don't forget Zach Neto.
That's true. Zach Neto's going to make it. Zach Neto is just a gangster. What a good player.
Which could help Dylan Dingler, though, right? Because if Zach Neto makes it, Logan O'Hoppe's not in, there goes Dylan Dingler.
All right, real quick before we get out of here, let's talk about the injury updates. Reese Olson, Matt Vierling. We don't really need to talk about Bo Brisky going down. He went down last year, came back fine. John Brebbia needed to go. Really don't need to discuss it. Let's talk about the injuries. How close is Reese Olson? When's Matt Vierling coming back?
Reese Olson, right ring finger inflammation. He made his first rehab start for AAA Toledo this past Saturday. He allowed 2 runs on 2 hits with 4 walks and 2 2/3 innings. The Tigers have him on a rehab assignment to build up his arm strength again and make sure that he's able to continue throwing. And that way, when he is ready, he can just hit the ground running. There's a big problem, though. He did not throw any changeups in his rehab start. He threw 48 pitches, 0 changeups. That's the pitch that's been bothering him going all the way back to the middle of May. 0 changeups. He's still not throwing it. And the Tigers have said that they are not going to bring Reese Olson back until he's able to throw his changeup. So that's why they're doing this. You keep him ready by building his volume in AAA Toledo. And then the moment he's able to throw that changeup again, the moment he's able to rip it with intent and not feel any pain, that's when you can get him back in the Tigers rotation ASAP. Because if you have him continue to throw bullpens and it's bullpen after bullpen after bullpen, and then one day he's like, okay, my finger feels good. I can throw my changeup. Well, then you got to go on rehab for, a handful of starts, right? To build up that volume again. So the Tigers going to have him build volume now. And then that way, when the changeup is ready, he can slide right back into the Tigers rotation. But it is still concerning. 0 changeups, 48 pitches in his first rehab start. It's been over a month since he had the injury. That's really concerning. Matt Vierling, right shoulder inflammation. He has completed 2 games on his rehab assignment with AAA Toledo. He is going to return to Detroit for some throwing work. That's presumably happening on Monday. Before the Tigers decide what the next step is, he's probably going to go back out on rehab with the Mud Hens again. He's been DH only with the Mud Hens while going through his throwing progression. So he's going to have to play the outfield and third base again, I'd have to think, before coming back to the Tigers. So I don't know if Matt Vierling is going to be back before this time next week. Just when you consider the fact that he's been DH only, he hasn't completed his throwing progression. He still needs to play outfield and third base. The Tigers are going to be quick with it because, again, there's no point in dragging out a long rehab assignment. Either he's going to be healthy or he's going to be hurt. There's one of the two things. So we'll see where Matt Vierling is at. Hopefully he's going to be able to be back sooner rather than later. The Tigers could really use his bat in the lineup, his defense, whether it's in right field or at third base. He's a valuable player for what he brings. But that's where those two guys are at. Some concerns for both Reese Olson and Matt Vierling, despite continued progress.
Who's getting demoted when Matt Vierling gets promoted?
See you, Trey Sweeney.
Yeah, that's probably the answer. That's for sure probably the answer. And as far as Reese Olson goes, I think he described it perfectly. I don't think we need to be too concerned about it. What they're trying to do is build up the game conditions and his ability to essentially, as soon as he's able to rip a changeup, he's going back in the rotation. They want to do that seamlessly and not waste any time. So I think that's the reason why he did not throw a changeup, but still went out there for 48 pitches the other day. He may do that again in the next start. But I think within the next 2 starts, we're going to find out how close he is. If he's not ready, probably post All-Star break. I'm going to be pretty concerned. He may get a start in prior to the All-Star break. You know what time it is, Ev? It's time to get the hell out of here. So I want to remind everybody, please rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and especially where? YouTube. You can always find us embedded in every single Evan Petzold article, even on your mobile device, at freep.com and wherever you listen to podcasts. I want to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, our producer, the Magic Man, Robin Chan. I want to shout out everybody like Christian Romo and Jared Ramsey that's filled in for you. I want to shout out my boy Ryan Ford. I want to shout out my amazing grandsons who were so sweet yesterday. The spectacular Mamia Savannah Petzold, who made sure Evan Petzold had a great Father's Day. And until next week, peace.